It all started with a whisper, a secret you were never meant to hear. The kind that slithers through the quiet halls of power, echoing in the forgotten corners of history, twisting the truth until it's unrecognizable. You thought you knew the story, didn't you? The grand narrative spun by the victors, etched into the very fabric of our understanding. But what if I told you that beneath that polished facade, a darker, more potent truth lies waiting, a truth so profound it could shatter the very foundations of your reality? This isn't just a tale of what could have been, but a chilling mirror reflecting the manipulation that has always been, and still is. Imagine a chosen one, destined for greatness, but tethered by chains he couldn't see. Anakin Skywalker, not as the Emperor's pawn, but as a man awakened to a deception far grander than any Sith Lord could conceive. The Jedi Council, those supposed bastions of light and wisdom, saw his immense power, his unparalleled connection to the Force. They saw not a potential savior, but a threat to their carefully constructed order, a disruptor of their predictable currents. His observations, his theories on the Force, deemed dangerous. Not because they were inherently destructive, but because they dared to question the established dogma, the comfortable lies they had built their empire upon. They called it temperance, a polite word for suppression, for forcing a vibrant, burning spirit into a sterile, confined box. They feared the fire he carried, not because it would burn the galaxy, but because it would expose the cold, dead embers of their own stagnant traditions. This isn't just about the Force. It's about control. Every institution, every power structure, seeks to define the boundaries of acceptable thought, to label anything beyond their understanding as dark or dangerous. They confiscate knowledge not to protect you, but to maintain their grip on what they consider reality. They relegate the curious to the archives, not for study, but for isolation, for the subtle, insidious process of breaking their spirit. They want you to believe that true understanding can only be found within their sanctioned texts, their approved narratives. But what if the real knowledge, the forbidden insights, lie in the very places they've declared off-limits? What if the path to true mastery isn't about following their rigid rules, but about understanding the very forces they've demonized, integrating them, and transcending their false dichotomies? The true danger isn't the unknown. It's the refusal to explore it, the blind adherence to a flawed system that fears its own shadow. They tried to break him. They cast him into the sterile quiet of the Jedi archives, a prison of parchment and holocrons, believing that by severing his connection to the front line, they could extinguish the dangerous spark of his curiosity. But what they failed to grasp, what they always fail to grasp, is the nature of a truly awakened mind. You cannot cage a wildfire with rules and dusty books. Anakin, forced into the role of a glorified assistant, found himself surrounded by what the Jedi deemed acceptable knowledge, a carefully curated library designed to reinforce their limited worldview. He saw through it instantly. It was the galaxy's official narrative, sanitized and stripped of anything truly profound. His spirit yearned for more, for the hidden currents and forbidden pathways of the Force, the very things Jocasta knew, with her blind loyalty, denied even existed within those hallowed halls. But fate, or perhaps a deeper, unseen current, intervened. A discarded notebook, his own radical theories, tossed back into his life by a man who saw not a rebellious student, but a kindred spirit. Quinlan Vos. A Jedi, yes, but one who understood the suffocating grip of the Council's dogma. A man who moved in the shadows and saw the hypocrisy that festered at the heart of the Order. If I were you, I'd be putting my theories into practice by now, Vos had said, a statement that cut through the carefully constructed illusion of obedience. The Council had punished Anakin for mere thoughts, for intellectual exploration. This wasn't justice. It was an act of profound suppression, a desperate attempt to maintain their eroding authority. Vos saw the imbalance, the hypocrisy, and he offered a lifeline, a glimpse into a world where others, tired of playing by the Council's rules, yearned for the very truths Anakin had dared to whisper into his private notes. For too long, Anakin had felt like an outsider, a lone wolf howling at a rigid moon. But now, a revelation. He wasn't alone. Other Jedi, disillusioned by the war, by the Council's timid leadership and stifling restrictions, gravitated towards his ideas. They called the Council's restraint cowardice, their discipline restriction. These were not renegades for the sake of rebellion. They were seekers of truth, tired of serving a system that prioritized control over true understanding, dogma. Over the boundless potential of the Force, their numbers swelled, a dangerous congregation in the eyes of the High Council. The inevitable command came, disband or be removed. And in that moment, the true split occurred. Many chose the latter, choosing freedom over blind servitude, conviction over conformity. They forged a new path, a new order, one that embraced the totality of the Force, not just the fragments the Jedi deemed safe. On Dantooine, a planet pulsating with raw Force energy, they laid the cornerstone of their new temple. Here, Anakin, alongside Vosin the formidable Master Bao, finally put his theories into practice. This was not about embracing darkness, but about understanding it, integrating it, just as fire consumes and transforms, rather than merely destroys. This was the dawn of something new, something dangerous to the established powers, because it promised a path to true mastery, unburdened by ancient lies. The air on Dantooine crackled with an energy that felt both ancient and alive, a stark contrast to the sterile halls of the Jedi Temple. Here, the Force wasn't a placid current. It was a roaring inferno, waiting to be understood, not feared. Anakin, finally unleashed, plunged into the depths of his own theories. He revisited his experiences, the moments where the so-called dark side had manifested, the crushing grip of a Force choke, the searing rage channeled into a weapon, the primal shriek that could unravel an enemy's resolve. These weren't inherently evil. They were raw expressions of power, perverted by fear and ignorance. His core belief, the one that had so alarmed the Council, was that these abilities were simply extreme manifestations of light side powers, twisted by misuse, waiting to be reclaimed and wielded with conscious intent. The challenge, however, was immense. The path to integration was fraught with peril. Many of the new recruits, even experienced Jedi, struggled. They teetered on the precipice of corruption, overwhelmed by the sheer intensity of these untamed energies. The line between control and being consumed was razor thin. But among them, one figure stood out, an anomaly of profound balance. Master Bo. His mastery was breathtaking. He could channel the destructive potential of a Force scream, originally designed to instill terror, and transmute it into a wave of invigorating strength for his allies. It was a testament to his understanding, a living embodiment of true Force mastery. Bo saw the internal struggle within Anakin, the fire and the fear battling for dominance. Unlike the Jedi, who would have offered cold criticism and rigid discipline, Bo offered mentorship. He led Anakin to a forgotten stone altar, the remnants of an older, perhaps wiser civilization. There, surrounded by kindling, Bo conjured fire from his palm, a swirling vortex of orange and yellow that filled the air with the scent of smoke. The Jedi think the Force moves like a current, predictable and serene, he rumbled, his voice deep and resonant. The Sith think it's closer to a raging storm, unpredictable and a mixture of everything. But both ideas are too narrow. He gestured to the inferno, a massive wall of flame that seemed to blend into a single mass. It all seems to blend, right? So much so that it's easy to forget it's not a single mass. Kind of like the Force. This was the revelation. The Force wasn't a monolithic entity to be unlocked, but 1,000 writhing, burning flames, each unique, each expressing itself differently within individuals. The key was to discern your flame, to understand where your power burned brightest. Anakin, guided by Bo'o's wisdom, shifted his perception. He stopped seeing the wall of fire and began to discern the individual tongues, the small seams that separated them. He saw his own flame, flickering stronger than the rest, a powerful surge of will and control. This wasn't about suppressing emotion. It was about understanding its source, its purest form. When Anakin practiced Force Choke, an ability he'd used in moments of desperate rage, he no longer fought the anger. Instead, he recognized it as the raw fuel, but focused on the underlying impulse, the need to restrain, to control. He didn't choke the droid. He enveloped it, shielding it, immobilizing it through a precise application of his will. The cheers of Bo'o and Vos were not for a new destructive power, but for a breakthrough in understanding, a testament to transcending false binaries. This was dangerous knowledge, not because it led to destruction, but because it dismantled the very lies that held the galaxy in thrall. And with this new understanding, the Grey Watch, as they came to be known, began their ascent, not as another army, but as a force of awakening. The Grey Watch, now unified by a deeper understanding of the Force, intensified their training, pushing the boundaries of what was thought possible. They journeyed across the galaxy, seeking out worlds steeped in both light and dark, places where the very air vibrated with raw, untamed energy. These were not mere training grounds. They were crucibles, forging an immunity to the seductive whispers of corruption. The goal was not to avoid the darkness, but to master it, to channel its immense power without succumbing to its intoxicating allure. It was about touching the fire without getting burned, walking the precipice without falling. Quinlan Vos, with his innate connection to the living force, focused on refining their senses. He taught them to read the very fabric of existence, to track beings not just by their physical presence, but by the lingering echoes of their midi-chlorian signatures on objects, in the very air itself. They learned to peel back the layers of deception, to sense the hidden agendas and unspoken intentions in even the most crowded spaces. Bo'o, the quiet master of the Force's fiery heart, trained them to discern the fires in the midst of chaotic environments. He showed them how to identify the subtle shifts in the Force during combat, to anticipate enemy movements, and to exploit the burning weaknesses in their formations. This wasn't intuition. It was a profound, almost mystical ability to perceive the interconnectedness of all things, to see the threads of fate as they unspooled in real time. As their powers grew, a new question emerged, one that would redefine their purpose. What was the Grey Watch to become? They had shed the shackles of the Jedi, but that also meant severing ties with the Republic. Anakin, ever the loyalist at heart, was tempted to declare for the Republic, to lend their newfound strength to the war effort. But Bo'o and Vos, with their broader perspective, urged caution. To align with either side was to inherit their flaws, to be drawn into their endless, self-serving conflicts. No, they reasoned, the Grey Watch should remain a third faction, a neutral power acting with greater impartiality, a beacon of true balance in a galaxy consumed by false binaries. And so Anakin, recognizing the wisdom in their council, embraced this radical idea. They were few, a fledgling force against two colossal empires. They couldn't hope to match them militarily. Instead, Anakin envisioned them not as an army, but as a smaller, more precise military order, vigilantes, assassins, surgical strikes against the cancerous corruption that plagued both sides. They established themselves on force-rich planets long abandoned by both the Republic and the Separatists. Moraban, Tython, Danthan, Dathomir. Old temples, once forgotten, were revitalized, fortified, becoming the silent bastions of the Grey Watch. Then they struck, not in grand fleets or thundering armies, but in small, lethal bands. Vos, with his network of trackers and informants, pinpointed the targets: corrupt senators, ruthless warlords, crime bosses who preyed on the innocent. These were the true enemies, the parasites feeding on the chaos of war, hidden in plain sight within the structures of both the Republic and the CIS, the Grey Watch. With their lightsabers and their newfound mastery of the Force's subtle energies, became the unseen hand of justice, an avenging force that brought swift, undeniable consequences to those who believed themselves beyond reproach. They weren't fighting a war. They were excising a disease. The galaxy began to feel their presence, a chilling ripple of uncertainty spreading through the established order. The Grey Watch, silent and swift, became a whispered legend, a force of unpredictable justice. They weren't seeking conquest. They were disrupting the corrupted foundations of both the Republic and the Separatists. While their actions drew the ire of both factions, leading to inevitable clashes, the Grey Watch was never about direct confrontation. Their strength lay in precision, in targeted strikes that unraveled the enemy from within. When a droid army, a lumbering metal leviathan, targeted their sanctuary on Danthan, Quinlan Vos unleashed a masterclass in guerrilla warfare. The Grey Watch didn't meet them head-on. Instead, they struck from the flanks, a ghostly presence in the shadows, coordinating with recruited allies to cripple supply lines, sabotage maintenance equipment, and sow chaos. Then, with surgical precision, they targeted the nerve centers, the generals, the tactical droids, leaving the colossal army leaderless, a mindless horde ripe for the taking. Vos, leading a lightning raid, ambushed the disoriented droids, turning their superior numbers into a disadvantage. It was a victory forged not in brute force, but in intellect, stealth, and a profound understanding of the enemy's vulnerabilities. Master Bao's flame, however, burned brightest in the crucible of direct combat. He gathered a unique force, reprogrammed droids, stripped of their separatist programming, fighting alongside Grey Watch Jedi. They would strike at droid armies encroaching on neutral systems, places that the Republic and CIS had long ignored, leaving them vulnerable to exploitation. Bo's ability was uncanny, almost supernatural. He moved through the battlefield with an innate sense of their troop movements, a preternatural ability to detect weak points in their formations. He didn't just react. He predicted, seeing the fires of their vulnerabilities before they even manifested. Some called it instinct, others the Force guiding him, but the results were undeniable. He cleaved a path through their lines, his lightsaber a blur, the Force fire a searing extension of his will, burning away the illusions of their strength. Anakin, witnessing Bo's almost prescient combat style, found himself drawn to this technique. It resonated with Mace Windu's Shatterpoint ability, a way to perceive the weak points in any object or being. This wasn't merely about hitting hard, it was about hitting right. And Anakin, despite his internal struggle with loyalty, applied this new understanding when a Republic army inevitably came calling. He couldn't bring himself to assassinate former allies, not yet. Instead, his raids became a dance of disruption, disabling ships, stealing vital supplies, preventing their advance without bloodshed. He isolated and ambushed Jedi, capturing them or holding them for ransom, a stark warning to the Republic that their methods were no longer absolute. When an admiral, blinded by arrogance, pressed forward, Anakin left him a chilling surprise: a loaded blaster, etched with the Grey Watch insignia, placed beside his sleeping form on his own flagship. It was a silent, undeniable message. We breached your defenses. We will do it again. The admiral, shaken to his core, wisely recalled his fleet. They could hold their ground, keep their enemies at bay, but a deeper, more insidious threat was simmering beneath the surface of the galaxy. Anakin and Bo, in their meditations, sensed it. A fire, warped and concealed, burning bright on Coruscant, emanating not from the Jedi Temple, but from the Senate. A web, intricately woven, where beginnings and ends were indistinguishable. The Force screamed at them, "Asterisk, go here. Unravel this, This was the true enemy, the hidden hand pulling the strings, a threat far more profound than any droid army or Republic fleet. And the Grey Watch, once focused on cleaning up the chaos, now shifted its focus, aiming to cut through the heart of the corruption, the faint, almost imperceptible tremor in the Force, a discordant note beneath the cacophony of galactic war. Grew stronger for Anakin and Bo. It pulsed from Coruscant, not from the familiar, predictable currents of the Jedi Temple, but from the very heart of the Republic's political power, the Senate. This wasn't a localized battle. It was a systemic infection. The fire they sensed, there was not the open blaze of conflict, but a twisted, carefully concealed flame, a web of deceit so intricately spun that its origins and ultimate aims remained maddeningly obscure. The Force, in its profound wisdom, wasn't just guiding them. It was screaming, urging them to sever this malignant growth at its source. The Grey Watch shifted their focus, their vigilante operations now targeting the insidious network of corruption within the Republic itself. Their agents, a silent, deadly vanguard, infiltrated Coruscant, striking at officials and military officers entangled in this sinister web. Some were captured, interrogated for the hidden knowledge they possessed, their fear unlocking pathways to truths they had sworn to protect. Others were simply eliminated, not out of malice but out of necessity, to prune the poisonous branches leading to the root of the conspiracy. This wasn't about good or evil. It was about systemic rot. 2. Palpatine, the unseen architect of this grand deception, the Grey Watch was an unforeseen, grave danger. His carefully constructed plans, years in the making, were predicated on the absolute predictability of his pawns, the Jedi's rigid adherence to dogma, the Republic's self-serving bureaucracy. But the Grey Watch, with their unconventional methods and their uncanny ability to perceive the hidden fires of corruption, were dangerously close to unraveling his master plan. Their attacks, precise and devastating, sowed discord and doubt even among his most loyal allies. The question began to ripple through the shadows. Could Palpatine truly protect them from this phantom menace? He dared not take any chances. The Grey Watch, a mere splinter group, had become an existential threat. It was not difficult for Palpatine to manipulate the Jedi and the Senate into turning their full wrath upon this new, mysterious enemy. After all, the Grey Watch had attacked Republic forces, disrupting supply lines, capturing Jedi. They were rebels, anarchists, a dangerous third party destabilizing the Galactic Order. The fear of the unknown, the fear of losing control, was a powerful tool in Palpatine's hands. He painted them as extremists, no different from the Separatists, perhaps even worse, because their motives were unclear, their methods unpredictable. The propaganda machine whirred to life, twisting the narrative, transforming the Grey Watch from a force of balance into a ruthless, destructive cult. The Jedi, blinded by their own self-righteousness and the rising tide of galactic chaos, fell into Palpatine's trap. They saw only the breaches in their security, the audacity of a group daring to challenge their authority, rather than looking deeper, asking why these attacks were occurring. They failed to see the true enemy, the insidious corruption festering within their own ranks, within the very heart of the Republic they swore to protect. The stage was set for a confrontation, not just of lightsabers and force powers, but of ideologies, of hidden truths against manufactured lies. The Grey Watch, outnumbered and now hunted by both sides, found themselves facing the full, terrifying might of a galaxy consumed by its own deceptions. This was the true test, the ultimate descent into the forbiddens. Comment Eye of the Storm twice in the comments below if you feel the weight of these truths, if you are ready to see beyond the veil and stand in the eye of the storm. Comment Eye of the Storm twice in the comments below if you feel the weight of these truths, if you are ready to see beyond the veil and stand in the eye of the storm. Asterisk. The hunt was on. Not merely for the Grey Watch, but for the very idea they represented, the concept of balance beyond the imposed order, the dangerous notion that true power lay not in adherence, but in understanding and integration. Palpatine, with his mastery of manipulation, skillfully steered both the Republic and the Separatists, their armies vast and relentless, directly towards the fledgling Grey Watch. This wasn't just a military campaign. It was a psychological one, designed to crush their spirit, to prove that any deviation from the established path led only to annihilation. The Jedi, caught in their own self-delusion, became unwitting tools, convinced they were rooting out a dark threat while unwittingly serving the true darkness. Anakin, now truly beyond the Jedi's rigid confines, felt the crushing weight of this onslaught. His loyalty, once a source of internal conflict, had crystallized into a fierce commitment to the Grey Watch and their mission. He no longer saw the Republic as a noble cause, but as a compromised entity, a puppet of a hidden master. He led the Grey Watch in daring, unconventional defenses, turning their numerical disadvantage into a strategic asset. On planets once considered desolate, their fortified temples became fortresses of innovation. They mined forgotten resources, repurposed ancient technologies, transforming barren landscapes into death traps for their unsuspecting adversaries. They employed psychological warfare, manipulating enemy communications, spreading disinformation that amplified paranoia and turned allies against each other. Thus, with his profound understanding of the criminal underworld and the hidden networks of the galaxy, spearheaded intelligence operations that crippled enemy logistics. He identified key supply routes, weapon depots, and communication hubs, then unleashed precise, devastating strikes that left entire divisions stranded and without orders. He used his unique ability to sense lingering force imprints to uncover double agents and hidden moles within both Republic and Separatist ranks, turning their own spies against them. This wasn't merely warfare. It was a silent, brutal dismantling of the very machinery that fueled the galactic conflict. Bo'o, ever the master of direct engagement, led strategic counterattacks, his foresight in combat proving invaluable. He didn't just fight. He danced with the Force, reading the ebb and flow of battle like a conductor leading a symphony. His Force screams, no longer merely terrifying, became sonic weapons that shattered droids and disoriented clones, followed by waves of strengthening energy that invigorated his Grey Watch companions. He orchestrated ambushes in seemingly impossible terrain, drawing larger forces into choke points where their numbers became a liability, their rigid formations broken by the fluid, unpredictable tactics of the Grey Watch. He embodied the very essence of balanced power, destructive force tempered by profound wisdom, aggression guided by an almost meditative calm. As the conflict escalated, the Jedi Masters, those who had once been Anakin's mentors, found themselves increasingly bewildered. They faced an enemy that fought unlike any other, an enemy that seemed to know their every move, that wielded the Force in ways they deemed impossible. Their strategic assessments crumbled. Their attempts to predict the Grey Watch's actions, based on their own limited understanding of the Force, consistently failed. They attributed the Grey Watch's successes to dark side corruption, blind to the truth that they were facing a higher form of mastery, a more complete understanding of the Force than their own rigid dogma allowed. The Republic, in its desperation, began to unleash more devastating superweapons, more destructive tactics, inadvertently playing directly into Palpatine's hands by escalating the conflict and further destabilizing the galaxy, paving the way for his ultimate ascension. The galaxy burned. The war, fueled by Palpatine's unseen hand, raged with a ferocity that threatened to consume all. The Grey Watch, though formidable, found themselves increasingly isolated, their numbers few against the combined might of two empires. But even As the flames of conflict reached their peak, a chilling clarity emerged for Anakin and his inner circle. The more they disrupted Palpatine's carefully woven web, the more obvious his true objective became. The war was not about victory for either side. It was about exhaustion, about fear, about a galaxy so desperate for order that it would embrace any solution, no matter how tyrannical. Anakin, no longer the impulsive youth, but a seasoned leader forged in the crucible of forbidden knowledge, made a pivotal decision. Direct confrontation with Palpatine, the orchestrator of this grand deception, was inevitable. But it would not be a mere duel of lightsabers. It would be a confrontation of ideologies, a battle for the very soul of the galaxy. He knew, with a certainty that resonated deep within the Force, that the Jedi would fall. Their blindness, their arrogance, their inability to adapt would be their undoing. They would be purged, not by the Sith as an enemy, but by the very forces they swore to protect, manipulated by the hidden architect of the war. As the Republic teetered on the brink of absolute collapse, Anakin orchestrated a series of daring infiltrations deep into the heart of Coruscant, not to destroy, but to expose. Vos used his unparalleled stealth and infiltration skills to plant evidence, to whisper truths into the ears of key senators and military leaders who still harbored a shred of integrity. This wasn't about convincing them to join the Grey Watch. It was about planting seeds of doubt, of revealing the insidious patterns of Palpatine's manipulation, forcing them to question everything they thought they knew. These were dangerous truths, the kind that could unravel a society, but necessary to awaken those who might still be saved. Bo, meanwhile, focused on strategic disruption, subtly diverting resources, creating logistical nightmares for Palpatine's forces, even as the Republic's war machine groaned under the strain. He understood that true victory wasn't always about direct combat, but about dismantling the enemy's ability to wage war, piece by agonizing piece. He worked in concert with Anakin, creating diversions, drawing attention away from the critical points of their infiltration, ensuring that the Grey Watch remained a ghost in the machine, unseen until it was too late. The climax arrived not in a grand battle, but in the chilling silence of Palpatine's private chambers, where Anakin, accompanied by Vos and Bo, finally confronted the architect of their galactic nightmare. It was here, in the heart of the beast, that the full extent of Palpatine's depravity, his manipulation of both light and dark, was laid bare. This wasn't just a Sith Lord. It was a master puppeteer, pulling the strings of an entire galaxy. The ensuing battle was not just physical. It was a clash of wills, a struggle against an entity that had woven deception into the very fabric of reality. The Grey Watch, having stared into the abyss of forbidden knowledge and emerged with balance, stood as the final bulwark against absolute tyranny. Their journey wasn't about choosing a side, but about transcending the false dichotomy that had imprisoned the galaxy for millennia. They were the silent guardians of a forgotten truth, the living embodiment of a force that embraced both shadow and light, not in conflict, but in perfect, terrifying harmony. And their story, once a whisper, now echoed through the liberated spaces of the galaxy, a testament to the power of awareness, a dangerous knowledge that, once heard, could never be unlearned. It changes a man forever once he hears it. And now you've heard it.